Well, I hope everybody's had a chance to log on, and we're really excited about our.
I'd say right now, Tom, we've got about 27 and it's starting to go up.
Oh, okay, all right.
So maybe we take a couple minutes and
sure
let people roll in. It's going up fast. We're now in the 40s.
Great. Great to see all the excitement. All right. Looks like we kind of stalled.
Yeah, about 53.
Perfect.
It's 5:30 on the dot. A couple minutes, maybe.
Yeah, that's no problem. It might have been a little slower drive home for those that are still working in the office.
Absolutely.
This is the point of that awkward silence.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to have maybe some Jeopardy music or something like that as we.
Some background music.
Well, looks we're at about 58 folks right now.
Deal. And I think Amber was saying earlier that we had upwards of over 150 folks that had voiced an interest. I can't remember the exact number. So there could be the potential for a really great turnout for the presentation this evening.
Yeah, we're in the mid 60s now.
Deal.
I suggest maybe wait one more minute and then we'll dive in so we can keep with time.
Perfect. All right. The numbers are looking good.
Looks like we're in the mid 70s now, and we're a few minutes past our start time. Tom, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Well, I'd just like to thank everybody and welcome you to this event. One of the challenges we've had as government is trying to get public input and really be able to have the open houses and the conversations and that we've had normally before we have projects like this, or at the same time of development of projects. And it's just, it's great to see the interest. As was just said, I think we're sitting at 76 participants. So thank you all for your time this evening. We've got a lot of great information and exciting information to share with the community. The city's been engaged with RDG and Anderson Bogert engineers on this project for some time now. And we've really drawn a lot of the inspiration from projects and previous plans and public outreach that's been done in the past. And we're just really excited to showcase this project with the public tonight. we're hoping to get good feedback and just be able to kind of move this project along. As you know, we're really trying to get the streetscape and the North Plaza underway in the spring, and we're just really excited about this process. So what I'd like to do is just introduce Justin Platts with RDG Planning and Design. He's got a few team members with him, and then we also have Anderson Bogart. Brian Jansen's on the line with Anderson Bogart, who's doing the infrastructure and the detailed engineering on the project as well, and let them kind of walk through our events for the evening. So Justin, with that, I'll just turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your kicking us off here. And it's interesting, normally we would have a meeting like this in person, and I would be thanking you all, or Tom or I would be thanking you all for braving the weather to be with us tonight. Simply gonna thank you for ignoring your TV, refrigerator, possibly children to be with us tonight. Project will be all the better for it. Laura, next slide. So tonight, our agenda is we'll introduce the folks who are on the line as it relates to the panelists. I want to talk about the logistics of this webinar. This is going to be new for most, I would imagine, and even though we're all used to meeting one way or another virtually at this point, we'll then jump into talking about the master plan. We'll talk a bit about the master plan. We'll talk more about the street reconstruction, streetscape, plaza update. We're going to do some polling as a way to be able to talk or be able to get feedback and input from all of you, as well as Q&A, and we'll talk a bit about what the options are there as it relates to question and answers. Before we do that, Laura, if you go to the next slide. We have a number of folks here today who are going to be able to participate in the question and answer and be able to answer questions that you might have. And you're probably wondering, yes, but how do I ask a question? We'll talk about that here in a moment. But folks from the city of Marion, Marion Chamber and Uptown Marion, Medco, and members of the design team. And I will put a big red asterisk out there, is that this project is not all figured out. We are working through the process. We will not have perfect answers for every question that is asked, but we will try. And any that we are unable to answer tonight, we will look to follow up on and be able to provide answers in the coming days. Another item is that there will be, for those of you who might be business owners, wanted to make it clear that there will be individual meetings with business owners as we go along. So this is not the only opportunity for folks who are actively located within the corridor or within the areas we're going to be talking about today to have an opportunity to learn more and to be able to share their thoughts. So with that, I'm going to go and talk through some of the logistics of how this webinar works. So first, the meeting is being recorded and it will be made available to you on the city's website in the coming days. As far as participation for all of the attendees here, the folks that you don't see on the screen, the 70 plus folks, the 80 plus folks who are out there now, you got a few tools that are going to allow you to participate. And at the bottom of your screen, you should see a number of things, and a couple of them are going to be important to you. One is the Q&A button. So that's question and answer. And at any time during this meeting, you should feel free to type a question which you would like to have an answer to. We strongly prefer that the question is about the project that we are talking about this evening. For instance, what is the meaning of life? You're not likely to receive a satisfactory answer to that question tonight. However, if it is about the project, we're going to do our best to be able to answer it. Second, you have the ability to upvote questions. So if this tool allows you to promote another person's question, if you also want to hear an answer to it. So if somebody asks a good question, you think it's a good question, you can go ahead and upvote it and it'll rise up the queue. We intend to answer all the questions towards the end of our discussion and are reserving approximately 30 minutes to do that. We appreciate your patience as we move through the information that we have to present to you. Another button that you'll see down at the bottom, as you mouse over the bottom of your screen, should be a poll button. So there are going to be a number of questions that we're going to be asking of you tonight. And at the conclusion of the master plan and streetscape presentations, we will activate a series of 6 polls, and each of these polls includes 1 to 3 questions. It's not a quiz about the presentation. Your responses are anonymous. We're simply asking some questions as it relates to things like parking, the streetscape elements, what it is you do and don't like, that type of thing. When prompted, it'll pop up on the screen with the poll, and I'll walk you through it as we're about to do that. You're going to want to submit your responses. And once a strong majority of those folks who are in attendance have submitted their responses, we will immediately post the results for everyone here to see. So instant gratification there. And then I'm going to review the responses with all of you so that we can all collectively see how we're feeling about a given question. And then we'll move on to the next poll. It's fairly straightforward. Hopefully we'll all be able to use that tool, and should it work well. So with that, Laura, if you could go to the next. So the overall scope of the project is illustrated here on your screen, and depending upon the size of your screen, probably varies on how well you can read it. But we have a primary master plan, which is really the blocks that are surrounding the Uptown area. And then we have the area in blue, which we'll talk a bit more in detail about. The specific area is the 7th Avenue street reconstruction and streetscape, which we'll be talking about. So that's generally the scope of the geographic scope of the areas that we'll be talking about. We'll go to the next slide. We've had a lot of folks who have participated, and this is not the comprehensive list. This is a list of folks who have participated here in the last several months, but as you all know, there have been a number of planning efforts that have been going on in Marion now for over a decade. And a number of those folks, you'll see another slide that's got a much even greater list of all the different folks who have been involved, or all the different groups who have been involved. And we thank all of you, because the efforts that you've gone through and the meetings like this that you've participated in over the last 10 years have added up to where we're at right now and have built that momentum for us moving forward. So to those folks who have participated in the past, and those in the distant past and in the intermediate and in the recent past, thank you very much. Go to the next slide. And so I've kind of covered this, but one of the things that we'll talk about as we get into the master plan is just how much has been done in the past. And as you can see, or maybe not be able to see, there was a central corridor plan, the Marion Comprehensive Plan in 2009, 2010, Imagine Next in 2018, all the way up to where we're at right now. So quite a lot. And people have said and made it very clear from a community feedback standpoint, the types of things that they want to see in Uptown. And we've taken these things to heart, wanting to see something from a planning standpoint that is a regional cultural and entertainment destination. And you're already doing so many of those things well, down to the desire to see creativity, fun, and quality of design in your public spaces. Those are things that we are taking seriously as we move forward, and hope that you will see that and recognize that in the information that we'll be sharing with you tonight. The next slide. And now Laura Kessel is going to lead us through a discussion or a presentation about the work that's been done on the update to the master plan.
Thanks, Justin. And thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Laura Kessel. I am a planner and landscape architect with RDG Planning and Design here in Des Moines. But before diving into the details of the 7th Avenue project, we felt it was important to share a high-level summary of the Uptown Master Plan update. This was created in conjunction with the 7th Avenue project. And to give you a little bit of background about this particular effort, this effort started in April of last year and is wrapping up this month. And as Justin said, this particular update to the Uptown Master Plan is really intended to draw on the previous planning efforts that many of you may have been involved in, to draw upon the public engagement efforts that were included in those 15 or so planning efforts, and use that as kind of a springboard to create actionable steps for near-term and mid-term improvements to the Uptown area, as well as to continue to lay out longer-term aspirational improvements for the district, and to work overall to that vision that Uptown Marion can continue to be a regional destination that draws people from around the Marion area and outside the Marion area and also reflects the people of Marion, the personality of Marion, and creates a great gathering place for your community. The plan itself is divided into a number of different sections, including kind of an overview of the process, summary of existing conditions of Uptown, and then looks at recommendations both in the public realm and some recommendations for the private realm, and then talks about the implementation for those different aspects of the plan. But one of the most critical items important to the master plan, and then also subsequently important to the 7th Avenue project that's the focus tonight, is distilling that feedback from the previous plans into guiding principles that could be used to help be touchstones for decision making. And those fall into principles in 4 broad categories. The character of the district. And when we think about the character of the district, we want to think about how do we continue to make public, intentional public investments in the public realm that really can support the private uses and activities that are happening in Uptown. And then how do we also balance the personality of the district that respects the history of Marion and also the creativity of the community. Another category, programming, or in other words, what should happen here, what does happen here, ask the questions about how we can make Uptown Marion a more 4-season, multi-generational place that has opportunities for both everyday activities and special events. From a redevelopment perspective, we think about how can we continue to promote land uses that respect the pedestrian character and overall character of Uptown. And then from an infrastructure standpoint, we want to think about the systems, transportation systems, lighting, utilities that really connect and support that bigger vision of Uptown Marion. We also took a look at existing conditions, and in a snapshot, the existing conditions in Uptown Marion today really are very strong and are headed in a really positive, good direction. There were 3 areas that we identified that needed, that could have some improvement, and those include the gateways and first impressions into the Uptown area, the opportunity for gathering spaces for community events and activities, and also overall walkability throughout the district, especially improving some of the barriers to create cohesion as a multi-block district as large as Uptown is today. As we get into the recommendations of the master plan, there are public realm recommendations that touch on some of the ideas that were supported in the earlier planning efforts, as well as opportunities for new improvements in the areas of vehicular circulation and bicycle circulation through Uptown. And one particular note as it relates to parking, we did do a high-level evaluation of parking in Uptown, but due to the COVID impact on the current parking conditions, this plan recommends that a full parking study is done at a later date when COVID is no longer impacting the parking counts that we'd be able to get today. The plan also makes recommendations about overall district identity with consideration for things such as gateway elements, vertical monuments, and opportunities for art. And taken together, and you'll see this as we dive into the 7th Avenue project, these elements are really about creating that sense of discovery and a perception that Uptown is a multi-block district that you want to walk 1 block further, you want to stay a little bit longer, and that you want to bring back friends and family to the district. Similarly, the plan makes recommendations for the future expansion of the Artway, as well as the creation of a trio of plaza spaces that really support this idea of a cultural and entertainment destination that can serve the community year-round and all generations and ages of people in all sorts of activities, including things like outdoor dining and special events. The other category of recommendations focuses more on the private realm, and this includes the identification of possible infill or future redevelopment sites, as well as an illustrative vision of what those spaces could look like in the future, should they redevelop. And then finally, each of the public realm recommendations comes with an implementation table so that the city can really take the vision for these particular areas and work with partners to make these a reality. Think about the phasing and the cost implications of each of those. And then also update those implementation plans every year, as we know that priorities and variables can change and impact those plans. So with that, I just want to conclude by saying we really, believe that the overall Uptown Master Plan is setting the stage for a really great continued vision for Uptown in general. And what you'll see in a moment as we focus in on the 7th Avenue component of the project is how that relates to some of these elements. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to my colleague, Pat Dunn, to talk about the 7th Avenue project.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Good. Thumbs up from my colleagues. Good evening. And again, thanks for joining us tonight. My job is to take the next 15 minutes or so and help walk us through a little bit more information related to the 7th Avenue reconstruction, the streetscape, the plaza, the North Plaza component. And we'll attempt to try to start at a real high level, broad overview, and drill down into the details of the project. So with that, I'm gonna make sure my pen is working. Okay. A little bit of a reminder, just again, at a very high level, this project is phase 1 of a multi-phase project to reconstruct 7th Avenue corridor. You can see here on the screen, the entirety of that 7th Avenue corridor is illustrated on the aerial map. And our project that we're going to talk about tonight is focused on the area between approximately 8th to 12th. And this project is definitely complementary to the 6th Avenue corridor and all the other reconstruction that's happened recently. It's also a big part of it is just simply the reality of aging infrastructure, from the road surface to storm sewers that don't exist and should exist, to aging sanitary sewer and water. And then last but not least, we just want to, we believe strongly in the public investments that result in private reinvestment in areas like this. Another high level aspect of this project is where's the budget being spent on this project. The pie graph on the left illustrates the fact that nearly 2/3 of the budget for this project is really focused on infrastructure and very necessary functional needs of utilities and pavement reconstruction and earthwork. And about 1/3 of the project is focused on the streetscape, the landscape, the plazas, a bit more aesthetic improvements. So it gives you a sense of where the majority of the dollars are going on this project. Okay, starting to again drill down into this. Here we are, a bit of an orientation. So on the far left is 8th and 9th Street, and on the far right is 12th. And we've been using as a design team and as a city group, we've been using the concept and the term of core area, which really represents the zone between 10th and 12th along 7th. Not that the other areas aren't important, and they will receive similar kinds of enhancements and reconstruction and functional improvements, but by focusing on this area of the Uptown, it will give you the best flavor of all the different pieces and parts of the project. As a way to help communicate tonight to all of you, this is an aerial view as if you were up in the air above City Square Park, looking down towards 7th between 10th and 11th as a prototypical 1 block zone. And You can see the storefronts that you all recognize, I'm sure. So we'll use this particular viewpoint to give you some orientation to the pieces and parts of this project. Start with, well, in the lower left, you see 5 different items. So I'll focus on these 5 things. Not that those are the only things, but they're certainly some of the key aspects. Number 1, or item number A on this list, would be on-street parking. You can see here that on the north side of 7th Avenue is proposed parallel parking. And on the south side of 7th Avenue, you see angled or diagonal parking. And we tested several different configurations to try to maximize and balance the pedestrian environments and the vehicular environments. So we believe that this is an appropriate balance of parking. And that parking will be adjacent to 2 through lanes in both, or a lane in each direction, of course. Perhaps one thing to note is that there will be protected left turn movements on 10th, so that westbound traffic has the opportunity to be in a protected lane. And so it's someone turning is not going to stop and back up a lot of traffic. I'll keep moving to the next topic, which would be street trees. You'll hear me say the word balance a fair amount tonight, because it's true that balancing the design of this has been paramount to us, attempting to try to incorporate shade, incorporate vegetation, along with making sure that visibility to business signage and just the beautiful architecture that exists within Marion is the balancing act. So you'll see here in a prototypical block, we have 4 trees per block face, or 8 trees total per block, 4 on each side. And those have been the species that we've identified at this point have been targeted to their specific area. For example, the trees on the south side here that have a bit more room next to the park to grow and develop a canopy, those species are selected for a larger canopy size. The trees on the north side, the opposite end of the spectrum, really where we've got a bit more narrow, we want something more columnar and a more tall, narrow canopy. We've worked with the City of Marion's city staff to hand select all the species throughout this project. They are designed, and the species have been selected in groups, so it's not as if there's just a peppering. It is a thoughtful selection of species throughout. I think we've got somewhere around 10 different species of trees. The next item would be street lighting and pedestrian lighting. Here you see on the screen on the north side, there will be a pedestrian scale light that exists that'll have hanging baskets, it'll have banners. It has the opportunity for projection of some imagery onto the sidewalk. It also has some opportunity for future sound, if that's something that the city chooses to do. So there's flexibility in that lighting system. On the south side, we actually see only 2 fixtures or 2 light poles here, which is a bit uncommon in a downtown area. Typically you'd have more quantity, but what we've done is we've concentrated the lighting onto a pole that does a lot of different things. It's a bit taller, so that the lights on the top of these fixtures will actually be flexible enough so that when this street is used for a festival, that these fixtures can actually illuminate the street in a unique way for things that happen in the street itself at those points in time when that street may be closed for street events. It also has the ability to do some work of shining on some areas of focus. If there was ever developed some kind of a performance small performance venue as a part of the park itself, those could actually illuminate that. So they're serving a lot of purposes and doing a lot of work in a small footprint. The next item would be identity markers. We've called them different things, from masonry piers to monuments, etc. But bottom line is they are approximately 8 foot tall. And you'll see in some, as we drill into those, that they set the stage and help identify the character and the image and brand of the Uptown area. And then last but not least would be the sidewalk zones highlighted here that provide, on the north side, they're quite generous actually, to provide space for outdoor dining along the storefronts. Of course, having a 6 foot uninterrupted through walking area. And then there's an amenity zone along the street itself that you'll see that is a place that captures seating and vegetation and a variety of things. On the south side, it's a little bit more constrained because in some ways, because of the diagonal parking that takes up a little bit more space, but there's also quite a bit of space along the park as well. In a moment, we'll drill into the details and the kit of parts that I talked about here a moment ago. But before we do that, it's important to make sure that you understand that the inspiration for the pieces and parts and the design of this has in fact been thoughtful. The group has used and paid close attention to the context, the forms, the textures, the colors that exist on 7th Avenue, within the Artway, within the architecture of Uptown. All those things have factored into the design. And taking those and developing ideas that in some cases almost literally start to talk about the roots and the history of Marion Uptown, and hoping to find some timeless kinds of design ideas. And then, as Justin mentioned, there's a long list of factors and things that have come up in previous efforts, and we're trying to be respectful and build on all of those things. You see on the right some imagery that exists, and the artistry that's already been incorporated. We're working hard to try to reflect and build upon that work. So here we are. We've got a kind of a prototypical area of a street and the plaza that we'll use to talk about the family of elements. And we'll start with some basics. Start with, this would be as if you were on the north side of 7th Avenue that I pointed out a few minutes ago. Parallel parking is existing here. Worth noting, and something that the city has chosen to do that's different than a lot of communities, is that the majority of this core area will not have a raised curb like you typically see in downtown areas, a curb and gutter that's continuous. The majority of it will be focused on the ability for pedestrians to move easily from the parking area or a festival that exists in the street to the sidewalk and the storefronts. And we will have things that keep the cars where they're supposed to be and to delineate the vehicular and pedestrian areas. Some of that will be raised curbs. Some of it will be some vertical delineators, but just wanted to point that out. And then I mentioned the trees. Within those, at the base of all those trees will be some perennial plantings to give color and life. We'll be taking and concentrating some unit paving, some brick paving along this amenity zone, and we're being respectful of the materials that have been used on other projects around Marion Uptown. We are making sure that some of the challenges of those unit pavers, for example, in some areas where they've settled, won't happen here by using some new detailing to add subsurface concrete underneath those and tying it in so that we don't have some of those challenges. And then I mentioned some devices used to keep vehicles in their place, some flexible delineators that will occur in key areas to keep those cars that they can bump into them, but which is okay, but they'll keep them from going where they're not supposed to go. Worked with city staff in Marion to develop a system of above grade planters and hanging baskets that will incorporate some maintenance friendly kinds of things that will minimize the amount of labor of watering on a daily basis and turn that into more of a bi-weekly kind of a basis to keep things looking beautiful. Additionally, along this corridor, we'll be using some off-the-shelf economical benches that recall some of the tree of life, peace tree, wood kind of things, and the warm materials that come with a wood bench for year-round use. And we'll also be taking some of those off the shelf and customizing them in key areas with some color and lighting and texture as a part of those benches to amplify some of the focal point areas. In addition, the paving will be accented around some of those customized benches and some of the plaza areas with paver system that is a ceramic tile in the shape of different types of tree leaves that give color and just animate the space a bit. I talked about the monuments or the vertical masonry identity pieces. Here's a daytime view of one of those that would incorporate some customized elements on the top and within a recessed area using materials that are very common to the Uptown area. And then at nighttime, those pieces would be illuminated to draw attention and to accent and give Marion Uptown and reinforce the existing identity. We've got a few views here that show just a little bit of a daytime and nighttime of that core area. Here's a view as if you were standing at 10th looking to the east, northeast. And with your park on the right, there'd be some monuments here that would act a bit as a focal point and a gateway into that core area in daytime, and in nighttime, those would illuminate and really draw attention to this district. Another point here is again, building on the work that's already been done and the entrance to the alley, art alley. And we want to be respectful of that work and hopefully draw even more attention to that as an entry portal to that fantastic asset. Okay, that's a little bit of the core area, 7th Avenue. Next, we'd like to shift gears and talk a bit about the North Plaza. And before we drill down into the North Plaza, I'm going to go even broader and talk about the overall master plan for this open space area, which really stretches all the way from 5th to 6th area, the library, all the way up to 8th. And this has been taken to a conceptual level so that we could make sure that what we implement as a part of this phase 1 will work with the overall concept. Be cohesive. It'll have some flexible and interesting spaces, a balance of green space and hardscape, and balance of pedestrian and bicycle movement and circulation, along with emergency access that's critical. Okay, with that, then I'm going to start drilling in, and a little bit of orientation for you. I've shifted so north is now to the right on the screen, with 7th Avenue being on the left. Hopefully you can turn and get yourself oriented there. Well, the art alley is actually here in the center of this particular graphic. First thing to note here is that when we say the North Plaza and what's in phase one, it is really the south part of this block. The north part, while it's been conceptually designed, is not a part of the implementation proposed to start this spring. I'd like to take a moment. There's 10 quick items here that I'll walk through each one just to give you a sense of how this design evolved. Starting with the more functional kinds of elements. There's a 3% slope, as you all know, from south to north along here. So we had to factor in drainage first and foremost. And we've done that by trying to keep the water from getting too concentrated by having a series of perpendicular elements that will pick up the water in trench drains. And then the north half, which is a bit more of a traditional parking and streetscape environment, would have drainage that would go to a more of a central spot. Second item would be utilities. Worth mentioning is the fact that there's some utilities that require reconstruction in this area that are deep, like 15 feet deep, and ultimately just the reconstruction of that by itself would tear up this area to the point where it just really makes sense to put it back in its permanent state as opposed to putting it back with some kind of a temporary. Bicycle movement through this zone has been thoughtful and hopefully intuitive, where it's a combination of slow speed / share the walkway / maybe even walk your bike through a zone that's got more pedestrian. And then ultimately it will transition to something a bit more of a on-street parking, shared on-street, not parking, but bike lanes as you get further to the north. I mentioned the north parking area is intended ultimately to be reconstructed. And you can see that trying to be thoughtful that with a cohesive design throughout the entire area. It does balance, hopefully balances well the vehicular and pedestrian needs there by single loading the parking area as opposed to double loading it. Double loading it as it is today just really doesn't allow for some of the other things that you'll see here in a moment. The alley connector is important. It will be a spot where people will be able to access and understand the art alley and be much more visible. And so we'll talk about the paving and some of the lighting here in a moment. One of the fun things about the North Plaza is trying to characterize these different zones. And we've used the term living room to characterize one of the areas within the North Plaza just because of the idea of having it be more intimate and have it be a place where people can feel comfortable to just hang out and with some flexibility built in as well. We do have a opportunity on the east side of this area for some potential small performances. And it works well currently along the backdrop of that building. And then you'll see and have seen in some of the renderings, the overhead suspended lighting system that occurs here and only here within the project that frames and creates that ceiling for this North Plaza area. Storefronts, outdoor seating, we've tried to balance that in 4 quadrants located where it's hopefully needed most and most desirable in close proximity to businesses and restaurants and storefronts. And then planting again distributed into 5 areas with some opportunity for some shade and overstory trees along with some understory and perennial plant beds. Okay, just about finished up here. Thanks for your patience listening to me. A few more pieces and parts related to the plaza. You see here 4 of them that are identified. We've got what we're calling fire pedestals or fire tables. We've got some unique paving, some unique seating, and some integrated art and interpretive elements here. Day and night, the intent with the overall project is to bring it to life and make it desirable for folks to want to be there. You see here that not only would some of the custom benches and the monuments be illuminated at night, but the concept of having 3 fire tables or outdoor, literally flames that would also have some illumination as a part of their base. So you can see a little bit better view of those fire tables here. Unique seating as a part of this living room area was something that we heard loud and clear. Some of it will be a bit more off the shelf, but unique in the fact that it could be flexible and more of a group gathering kind of seating. But we've also proposed and are excited to advance the concept of taking and literally using some of the derecho event things that happened and turning those into a functional piece that has a history and a story to it. So taking some of the logs from the derecho and turning those into a very unique custom wood timber bench, log bench that could have, again, some story and interpretation as a part of that to remember the events and the hardships that Marion and others went through on this year. I'll finish up here with a few images, again, daytime and nighttime, just to give you a sense of the character. And this is a view as if you're looking north into that North Plaza from the crosswalk area of 7th. Looking towards the northwest, you can start to see some of the different components, pieces, and parts. And this view, probably as good as any, illustrates the suspended lighting system over the North Plaza area that would help activate it, bring it to life. A view of that area, and then finally a view of that living room zone, hopefully a focal point, place where people want to take selfies and to just hang out. I'll broaden out here as we transition from this presentation. At this point, I believe the next part of our night's events would be to start the polling. Justin?
Oh, thank you, Pat. Okay, so we are going to jump into the polling piece. People are populating the Q&A. Thank you for that. We will be able to get to those answers here once we get through the polls. And if you have questions, please do feel free to use the Q&A function. And also, if you like any of the questions that you're seeing there, feel free to click on the thumbs up and upvote them, and they will be answered, I suppose, in the order in which the queue is showing them to us. So now we are going to jump into the polls. And Pat, would you go to our first slide? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch a poll. And in the middle of your screen, you're going to get a dialog box that's going to say polling 1, poll 1, and there's going to be 3 questions in there. And what we would like you to do is simply answer them as best you can and then hit submit. And once we have a majority of the folks who are on, which is just around 90 at this point, we will go ahead and post those here for all of us to see. Each one of these polls should take probably a minute to 2 minutes overall between all of you responding and posting these, and then we'll take a look at them as we go through. So let's jump in and start with our first one. And if you don't now, you will soon see a poll come up on your screen, and there are 3 questions, so that means you may have to scroll down as you answer, depending upon the size of your screen and the dialog box. We're about 30, 40 people have responded. $66. Okay. Well, one of my other fellow panelists tell me, are you seeing the live results right now? Are they coming through? No? Okay. So what I'm going to do then is I am going to, we've got the large majority of folks have responded. I'm going to end the polling. I'm going to share the results. So now you should be seeing the results of the poll of the folks who are attending. So I've participated in other public input meetings related to Uptown Marion in the past. We've had about 54%, so over half the folks say that they have. About 71% of the people say that they shop, eat, work, live, or play in Uptown Marion often, with another 28% saying sometimes. So it makes sense. The vast majority of you are regular users. And I agree that our city needs to invest in infrastructure and improvements to the public areas of Uptown area. 97% of folks on here say yes. So not unanimous, but pretty strong right there. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing this. Pat, if you'd go to the next one. And I am going to launch the second poll. And here we go. 2 questions this time. All right, 8, 9, 10, 20. Folks are quick on the draw. We're at 50. Now 70% have responded. Very good. Okay, we're now, it looks like we're topping out about 85% of folks on this one. So I'm going to end the polling. And I'm going to share the results. So on the first question, should the project reuse brick from demolished streets in the new streetscape? 49% of folks say yes, 27% say no, and 23% are not sure. And on the second question, should the 7th Avenue Street Improvements Project spend additional public funds to incorporate and maintain new brick pavers into new public streets in Uptown? We have 37% saying yes, we have 41% saying no, and 22% saying I'm not sure. Excellent. You're all doing really good. Thank you for this. All right, so now we're going to go to the next one. Poll number 3, we're almost halfway there. And 2 more questions this time. This one's a bit different, talking more about business in Uptown. And it looks like some of you are, as I post this, you'll see it looks like some folks are interested in opening a business in Uptown. And for that, you are going to be wanting to talk with Brooke Prouty with Uptown Marion. There she is waving. She's going to be the person that you'll want to talk to about that. She'll be able to give you good information and tell you more about it. So we're at just about, we're at 80%, 81, 85. Okay, so now I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So for the 2 questions, my top priority for a new business in Uptown is one that focuses on, it appears that meat and cheese and outdoor recreation are our winners. The responses have them as a tie. And the next would be arts and hobbies at 15%. A bookstore at 8%, and men's clothing at 5%. And are you interested in opening a business in Uptown? We have 11%, 8 respondents saying yes. We have 66 respondents saying no, that's about 89%. And that's to be expected. We weren't expecting that everybody here was looking to start a business. I'm not sure you'd have enough room actually if 90 some people show up and wanted to do that. But hey, we try, right? We try to make room for that. Stop share the result. What's that?
We would try and make room for that.
Yes, we would. Yes, we would. Uptown just got a little bigger. Okay, so we're going on to poll number 4. And this is another one with 3 questions, and it focuses in more on parking. So here we go. All right, we're over 50% responding. 70% responding. People generally respond pretty quickly as it relates to parking. It's something that we all care about when we're visiting a place, particularly in the Midwest. So we are just about 88% responding. We'll give it just a couple more seconds. Thank you all for your patience. Okay, so I'm going to end the polling here, and I'm going to share the results. So the first question, I'd prefer that future parking in the Uptown is, the greatest number of responses is a mix of these options, 1 hour, 2 hour, and 4 hour. The second greatest response is 2 hour parking. Third is 4 hour. And finally, we have 1 person who wants the 1 hour. Nothing wrong with that. I support paid parking in the Uptown area. With 59% no is the answer to that one. We have 29% saying yes and 12% saying I'm not sure. And number 3, parking immediately next to the business I wish to visit is important to me. No is the leader there at 72% of responses. And we have yes with 28% of responses. Okay, so moving on to our 5th poll. And this one is has a number of different elements to it, but it is 3 questions. Might take a little longer though. There's more options as it relates to filling in the answers. So take your time. We're moving right along right now, and we're on track to be able to answer our questions and have good discussion here at the end. Or be able to give you good answers at the end, I should say. So we are currently at 45% of folks responding, which is just fine. Take your time. There's more options here. Currently at 74%, 78%, 80%. We'll wait here just another few seconds. All right, we are just at about 90%. So I am going to go ahead and end the polling. And even if you're partially filled things out, it's still hopefully keeping track here. Okay, so 87% have voted. I'm gonna end polling. I'm gonna share results. So the ability for 7th Avenue Streetscape to be closed for festivals and events is important to me. Yes, got the most responses at 83%, 63 folks. The no is at 13%, 10 folks, and we had 4%, 3 people, I'm not sure. Number 2, select all streetscape elements that are important to you. The number 1 response getter is trees and plants at 86%, followed by, let's see, I'm gonna do my best here. Looks like ambient lighting at 80%, then flexible spaces at 70%, comfortable seating at 68%. And then we've got art integration with streetscape elements at 53%, useful signage at 51%, and rounding out with colorful paving at 34%. And my biggest concern for this project is, looks like our number 1 response is limiting business interruption while under construction. Understandable, 43% of the responses there. And then we have, next would be how Uptown will function when completed. That makes sense based on some of the questions that we're seeing there related to parking. The next 3 were all tied with responses as it relates to the cost of the investment, schedule of the construction, and how Uptown will look when completed. All of those are at 12%. Okay, we are moving on. Stop share. We'll move on to our final poll. And it's only one question. It's not even so much a question, it's a statement how you agree with. And I'm going to go ahead and launch that one. This one, I imagine, will take less time than the others. And I know you haven't learned everything you're going to learn yet today. The Q&A is going to address a number of the questions here. So we appreciate your filling this one out before we get to that. But I think we've got some positive answers for you. So we are now at 87% of folks who have voted. I'm going to end the polling. I'm going to share the results. So we have 95% of folks who are saying that they are encouraged by what they've learned in today's presentation. That's positive. No one said no. That's good to hear. And we're at 5% who are not sure. So excellent, excellent. And I'm sure the not sure folks might have a bit more certainty after they hear, hopefully, an answer they want to hear when we get into the Q&A piece, which is our next item. So thank you all for participating in the polling. That was helpful. We will capture these results and be able to, they will be a part of the information that the city has and is able to share going forward. So I'm going to stop sharing there. All right, so now we're going to jump into the Q&A, and it looks like we currently have 13 questions with a number of upvotes for different things. So we've got a number of folks who are participating in this, and I thank you for that. So what we're going to do here is we've got about 30 minutes, 28 minutes. And what we're going to do is I'm going to read off a question, and then I am going to do my best to distribute it to our panelists here. And they are going to do their best to answer. And again, as I said at the beginning, we may not have an answer for the question, but we will do our best. And it looks like a number of these we should have answers for. And any that we do not have answers for, we will be looking to get those answers for you and be able to provide them soon as part of the city's website. Perhaps it gets added to the FAQ or somewhere in there. So with that, our first question, and I'm just simply going to read these all anonymously, is that it looks like a lot of parking will be lost on 11th Street. Is there a plan to add additional parking elsewhere in the area? And Laura, do you want to take a stab at that one first? And then others, if you feel that you can add to it, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the first phase with the 7th Avenue reconstruction and the south half of the North Plaza roughly is about net parking neutral. So the addition of the diagonal parking on the south side of 7th between 10th and 12th adds a significant number of parking spaces compared to what's there today. So overall, by my count in that area, we are actually increasing the parking by about 1 stall. Now, looking into the future, the importance of that parking study is something that is important to the city and that we want to continue to explore to think about the overall parking demand and management strategies for the district.
I could if I could say something on that too, I think in the North Plaza area, I believe we illustrated improvements north of the alley as the overall concept. The first phase and what this current streetscape project encapsulates would only go to the alley, connecting both the east and west artway together. The parking north of the alley would remain as it is, and we would foresee that that piece would happen at future time, and that would provide. I think someone else had asked the question about the access to the public space, and then also the parking area that's across from the snug. So that connection and that ability to access all of that would still be maintained with this project. There would be a much broader conversation about reducing the parking north of the alley and 11th Street into the future. So I just want to point that out. And then one other thing that we're looking at as it relates to parking in that area, because we understand that that's kind of become kind of an entertainment district in the Uptown. There is the ability, we're just exploring it at this point, of restriping parking on 8th Avenue that could potentially provide additional spaces in that area. So.
Great, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Laura. We'll move on to the next question here. And I will say some of these are also more comments. So I will read them so that you all hear them, but there's some that are more commentary as opposed to questions, and that's okay. So the next one with 8 upvotes, so this is a popular one. Would Uptown Marion ever consider adding a grocery store to the area? It would be cool if one went into the old library location, even a new Pioneer branch, or just a small local grocery store that is walkable for folks in the area. It now has 9 upvotes. So maybe it was the quality of my reading, but I think it's the quality of the idea. So it's a comment. It's got 10 upvotes. People are paying attention. So something for all of you to be aware of. 11 upvotes. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that because we have given that one its due.
I can
next
that one,
oh,
Justin.
please.
We would love to have a grocery store in the Uptown area. A lot of times the chains that run grocery stores have very specific criteria before they come into a district like ours. And a lot of that has to do with having residents that live close by, having adequate parking. All of that factors into it. So it would be awesome. I agree with that comment.
Great, thank you, Brooke. Our next one is, are you doing anything to make the businesses more accessible to people with disabilities? And this has 3 upvotes. So Brian or Pat, do you want to jump in there?
Sure,
I could. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say that we have been instructed by the city to do everything that's possible to make these entrances accessible. Some of them are more challenging than others. I mean, a lot of them do have steps that go into the buildings, multiple steps. Some of them will be pretty simple, and it's just a matter of adjusting that sidewalk elevation. And by doing a complete reconstruct of the road, we're able to kind of make some changes with the road elevation and the sidewalk elevation to make that possible. So I wouldn't necessarily say every building will be accessible, but we're doing everything we can.
I think it's also important to note that as a part of this, from an accessibility perspective, the sidewalks are much wider. Where there's street cafe areas, so where there's dining on the sidewalk, there would be adequate room. I know that's been a complaint that we've received in the Uptown, is when we do outdoor dining, there's people get blocked and accessibility becomes an issue. We'll also be re-looking at the number of handicap accessible spaces. So that'll be another issue that'll be addressed in this project. So you'll see more ADA spaces. And then, clearly, if you are walking around or have a wheelchair or an accessible issue in the Uptown currently, there's just a lot of just not consistent walkways and crosswalks. And so all of that will be straightened out with this plan, and we're required to do that. So that is one very exciting piece to this, I think, is the ability to really revamp and make, you know, a more accommodating to all folks. So that was a key piece to the conversation.
Great. Thank you both. All right, next one is a comment, not a question, with 5 upvotes. Those monuments are super cool, not a question. Thank you for that. We agree. The team of folks who've been working on it and all of the steering committee members and all of that are the reason that those are the way that they are. The next question is, how many people on the call are business and building owners? I'm not sure that that we can answer that given the format that we're in.
Brooke, I believe all the building owners, and Brooke, maybe you can talk to how we did the invite, and that might provide some character of the folks that are on the call.
Yes, the building and the business owners were all notified either by mail or email. And then I have about 113 building business owners and some Uptown residents that were planning to either attend this meeting today or requested a recording of this meeting. So I can't tell you exactly who's on the call today, but I know that we have done a lot of work to have some outreach to the building and business owners.
And just a quick follow-up, Brooke. The idea behind this is that this is an introduction of the project to the community. And obviously this is, you know, the businesses and building owners are going to be impacted by the improvement. I think the idea was that upon conclusion of this meeting, there would be a reach out from all of us to the individuals to set up specific meetings to discuss everything from the ADA accessibility and access during construction and phasing at a later date. I think that's fairly safe to say at this point. So.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And we're adding the mayor in as a panelist here now. He's joining the meeting to make you all aware. Next item is a comment. The overhead view that showed the park looked like a lot, in all caps, of pavement taking over what is now mostly grass. Don't do this. The grass is important, and that is the purpose of the park as a focal point. We don't need more paved areas. And that had 4 upvotes. Next item is a question in the core area. Is there a plan to help to supplement the fact that we lose 7th Avenue parking in front of 1000 7th Avenue? And if I recall correctly from the first parking question, Laura, you were saying that in that area between 10th and 11th on the south side of the, is it the south side that we're adding 7 spaces due to restriping?
Yeah, so I believe the particular property in question is at the intersection of 10th Street and 7th Avenue. And there is a loss of 1 parking space on the south side of that, the way the lanes are reconfigured. But on the south half of that block, due to the restriping of diagonal parking, we will gain 7 parking spaces there.
I think it is unfortunate that we can't replace, you know, the parking as it sits today everywhere. You know, we're in redevelopment. It's difficult to balance, as Patrick said, the word balance a lot. That balance the new improvements, accommodating traffic, and just moving forward. So the good thing is there going to be a much grander walkway in front of those areas. So that's going to be a significant plus, I think. And the reason that space is gone, and Mike Barkalow can correct me if I'm wrong, or Brian, but with the addition of the turn lane and not to back up traffic, that widens the necessity of the travel lane in that area. And therefore, you know, that's why that travel or that left turn lane isn't much greater than it is. We didn't want to lose as parking, but we got to have some protected left turning movement in that location. So I know that doesn't help with the situation, but that's how and why that design came out the way it did. And so.
Great. Thank you. Next one. We've got about 16 minutes left in what we were planning from a time standpoint. Next question has 2 upvotes. Who is responsible for shoveling the snow and doing other upkeep on the sidewalks and brick areas? Who would like to take that one? Tom?
I can take that. You know, currently that's a situation that exists, and I think there's some confusion. One of the things that we've discussed internally is that initially this will definitely be on the city's radar as a responsibility to take care of that. And speaking with the Parks Department, will likely be those folks doing that upon construction.
I just want to clarify, Tom, in the public realm areas, it will be the same as it is today, where directly in front of your store, you would be responsible for clearing the walkway in front of your door.
I believe that when we're up there, I mean, we probably won't be up there like at 8 a.m. when the business is open, but the idea is that we would be up there clearing the snow ultimately. And Mike, or I know Seth is not on the call, but we can clarify that into the future. But with new Streetscape, I think that's going to be something we'll want to be maintaining.
It's probably a good one for the frequently asked questions piece of the website as well. So these are comments, and there are a number of them that I'm going to read through them, and I'm going to do my best to speak at 1.5 times here. City Square Park needs to remain an open space with limited permanent fixtures. Basically, keep the X crosswalk and perimeter sidewalks. Max amount of grass space as possible. Keep the flexibility of this area. Return the statue, keep the cannon, and the American Legion torch. Fixtures for sitting and tables need to be of a material that does not show or retain dirt, the open honeycomb, rubber covered type. Sidewalks need to remain open for pedestrians and wheelchairs. Don't force pedestrians on the curbside. Keep safety and inclement weather issues in mind. Any items installed need to be durable and time tested. Plan for growth around trees. These areas within 10 years usually are problem areas. Parking is always the big question. That's a comment there. That's one comment. And that had 2 upvotes. Next, another comment. I like the 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 9-hour parking signs. I think they must be referring to one of them in the model. Another comment, explain the fireboxes. Had 2 upvotes. Pat, do you want to jump in on that?
Sure. Yeah, they are gas fire tables that would have an open flame on the top. They would have some glass wind guards that would surround them to prevent smaller children from being able to get burned. They would be on a timer so that folks could set the timer and have an open flame for a certain amount of time. But in essence, they are very similar to what you would see in other, like outdoor hotel areas. They're fairly popular in a variety of areas. We've been working with City of Marion fire folks to make sure that they conform to all code and safety requirements.
Thank you, Pat. Next question. What happens to the access to the parking lot behind Ramsey's? Will it still be accessible from 11th Street?
And I think I answered that earlier, but yeah, yes. It will be in the initial phase, and you know, the north of the alley is it planned for improvements at this point.
Great, thank you, Tom. Next question, where we've answered 12, we've got 10 to go. With the changes to the 7th Avenue, does the design take any space from the park? It seems the streets and sidewalks being wider would mean the park gets smaller.
No, I can jump in there. No, we are not taking away park space. The sidewalk that's going in is going in the same location as it is relative to the park itself. So the answer to that is no, we are not encroaching into the park any more than the current sidewalks do.
But we took away the center travel lane is how that extra space was provided.
Thank you. Another one. I agree with the comment about tree growth. Trees surrounded by pavement tend to die off rather than thrive. So this is a concern, especially in the plaza and on the north side. So, and that is something, Pat, I suppose we could address it in the way that we create the landscape beds and the areas for the trees to grow, and the tree selection, choosing trees that have proven to do well in urban areas, and varieties or cultivars that do well in urban areas is part of the design of the streetscape as we're looking at it.
I also think it's important to note that there's been a lot of advancements in how those trees are selected and the type of tree and the underground containment of the structure that's complete with the streetscape. I think 6th Avenue provides a very good example of how those trees are thriving and they're working, and they're just good examples of how it can occur.
Our next question, well, it's a comment, but it seems like it's something that, Pat, perhaps you could address. I have concerns about how people get out of the car door with parallel parking on the north side of 7th Avenue. When the door is opened up, there is a raised curb or a tree or perennial in the way. The passenger can't get out without stepping on the curb or into the plants.
That is a correct statement, that in certain spots, there will be situations where there'll be a plant bed adjacent to a parallel parking area. I showed a diagram of a raised curb. That raised curb will be 12 inches wide, which gives the ability for someone to use that as they would the top of a regular curb in a sidewalk area to navigate in the east-west direction and not have to step in the plant bed. So it's a balancing act of maximizing the plant areas with providing a relatively narrow strip, but a strip, albeit that someone can navigate east-west to get around it.
Excellent, thank you, Pat. Next comment. I think that the flat, no chamfer bricks, such as are proposed here and were used on 6th Avenue, are a poor, dated 1970s idea. The next question.
Justin,
yes, please.
I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to use the lugged and chamfered brick on and in the sides in the streetscape. Am I correct? That's the conversation that I recall. So.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep. So we found that they work better, they don't chip as much, and they're easier to lay, and so that's absolutely how we're proceeding. Good question.
Good. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Next question, how will parking affect permanent residents living uptown, especially when events are happening? So I suppose to make that one a bit more direct, when events are happening and areas are cleared out, how's that going to affect those who are residents of the uptown?
I can start. And Brooke, please jump in. I don't know that it's anticipated that there will be larger events with the redesigned spaces, but that the spaces are designed to provide greater flexibility for the events that are already happening uptown. Now, if there is a concern about how that's impacting residential parking, that is a good potential item to be explored during the parking study, because there are different strategies that can help mitigate concerns about parking in residential areas.
Yeah, I can add to that too. We're also looking at how to best maximize parking. So residents are typically there at the evening, but maybe their car's not parked there during the day when businesses might use it. So how can we turn those parking spaces over multiple times in the day and have them used for different reasons most effectively? So.
Excellent, thank you both. Another one that is for you, Laura. When biking from West Side Roundabout heading east, will the cyclists be routed on 6th Avenue or 7th Avenue?
Yeah, so the main bicycle route from an east-west direction would continue to be 6th Avenue. And then north-south, we'd be encouraging people to use that 11th Street corridor. There are longer-term plans to make a connection on 8th Avenue as well. There's a partial bike lane that does stop about midway through Uptown, but that would potentially be a future option for bicyclists as well. 7th Avenue, the diagonal parking and bikes that isn't a good mix. We wouldn't encourage that as a primary bicycle route because of that backing up traffic movement.
Thank you. We have answered 19 questions. We have 4 more to go and 6 minutes left in our time slot here. Next one, there were a couple of mentions of time limits on parking. Is that just being considered for the core Uptown area? Thoughts on impact to people who live uptown that use street parking?
Yeah, I'd say again with this, we'd have to look at that within the parking study. We just spent a lot of time taking down a lot of restrictions. So we want to be very thoughtful in how we put those back up to maximize space for both businesses and residents. So there will be more input opportunities for both businesses and residents on that topic.
Thank you, Brooke. Next item, please address how businesses will be supported to minimize business interruption.
Yes, so we are a Main Street Iowa community. So Main Street Iowa works with different communities across the state during construction. There will be some sessions we have one scheduled for February that I'll be sending out an invite either tomorrow or Monday to the businesses, called Surviving Streetscape, and what businesses can be doing now to better weather the storm of a streetscape or to attract customers during that time. We do plan to continue to have events and promotions to keep people coming to the district during construction.
I think to add to that, we've had some practice doing this when we put the roundabout in at 7th and 7th. We did create a toolkit. We partnered with the engineering department to do updates during high traffic hours. So like the early hours when people are traveling to work, and then the later hours when they're coming home from work, just to give updates on what parts are going to be closed, what parts are reopening. And I think that we can continue to do those types of things. Luckily, we're not the first community to go through a streetscape project. And so we'll be reaching out to other communities who have done it successfully and implementing a lot of those great ideas. One of the things that a lot of our businesses have learned during COVID, unfortunately, is how to really use a lot of online platforms and be doing a really great job of reaching their customers. And so we will be working with them to just continue those efforts and really working hard to make sure we retain all of our businesses.
Another important thing to note is that we've been thinking about this for some time, for a number of years. And one of the main motivations behind the Artway was exactly this issue, because we wanted to create attractive entrances from the back of the buildings to as many businesses as possible. So that was one of the reasons why the Artway was even considered. And so we have been trying to think forward and plan for this for a number of years.
I think it's all, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I'd also like to mention that on our website for this project, the hope is to have some maps available that show kind of what parking areas are still available during the construction phases, as well as maybe how to access some of your favorite businesses, if that's through more of that front way or more of the alleyway.
Thank you all for that. A couple minutes left here, and we're down to 3 questions. We've answered 22 thus far. Will there be pedestrian signals on the 11th Street crosswalk?
I can answer that. The answer is no. We did look at that during the design, and ultimately we decided it's not necessary just due to the geometry that we're creating and the visibility of basically removing that median that's there today. It's just going to be two lanes through there. We looked at the traffic counts, and basically all the recommendations that we looked at is it's not recommended at this location. So
okay,
things might change. So it's something that could be added later on if warranted, but right now we're not going to be installing anything.
If I could also just chime in, I think for those that are on this, the broader understanding of how the transportation will work in the future in the Uptown is that the roundabouts are directing traffic to the new 6th Avenue. So it's from a commuter traffic or peak hour traffic, it is anticipated that the volume would move from 7th, where it's currently at, to 6th. So the idea that the traffic volumes were decreased, hopefully the truck traffic will find that as a truck route and not be using 7th Ave as a thoroughfare. So we're really anticipating a significant decrease in traffic volume. And there also will be a significant demarcation in the pavement, which illustrates that area. They'll be highlighted, but there'll be catenary lighting system above the walkway. So the hope is that the design will drive that ease of access. The other item, and I think even more critical, is we're going from a 3-lane cross section to a 2-lane. So that reduction of a 12 to 13 foot lane goes away. So that I think that'll be very helpful. All those items combined should create a much more viable pedestrian atmosphere.
Great. And the person who posted that question just wrote in and said, thank you for that answer about the pedestrian crossing. I do think that the design is good. So there you go. Last 2 questions. We're at 7:01. Thank you to the 67 folks who are still hanging on. It's been very, very good back and forth here through the medium that we're needing to use at this time. So we appreciate you all hanging in there. Were economic developments in other cities and towns studied for ideas? Laura, do you want to talk about some of the planning aspects?
Yeah, I can jump in. So it certainly is a part of our process whenever we approach a plan like this to think about the precedents and what's worked well for other communities. From the big picture ideas like creating experiences and plaza spaces where people form memories and create opportunities for gathering, to smaller scale decisions like street trees and their impact on districts like this that have been shown in studies to improve overall economic activities in Main Street districts. So those types of decisions are important to us when we look at a district like the Uptown district.
Thank you, Laura. And our last comment question: I would like to see more classic timeless options for seating signage. I would suggest that the leaf theme needs a vote. I'm not sure it has a timelessness or significance to Marion, historic town square, Main Street. I would opt for something classic and or historically significant to Marion. Will there be a chance for the community to vote on this?
Well, I can jump in and at least characterize the fact that the visuals and the renderings that are shown today, as far as the vertical imagery in the monuments or the piers, for example, those are not finalized. And there will be opportunities for the technical committee and city staff and other public folks to contribute to the final selection of those pieces.
I think. Oh, go ahead, Pat.
Well, and there's been an attempt to try to use some of the combination of the Mondrian kind of tree artistic integration that already exists in the Artway with some of the organic and roots and history of Marion. And there's bottom line is, yes, there is opportunities to impact the final design. It is not finalized quite yet.
And I would suggest, and this is a good segue, Pat, if you would pull up the last slide of your presentation. We've concluded our questions. Got one last comment that says, great presentation. Really excited to see Marion investing in its Uptown. Marion has so much potential, and this has made me feel excited and proud to live here. And it even has one upvote. So that's good stuff right there. As it relates to further input and opportunities, on the screen here for the 65 of you who are still watching at home, you have a couple things happening next. The Streetscape, the 7th Avenue reconstruction, Streetscape, 11th Street Plaza, all those things are anticipated to begin construction in spring of 2021. additional questions, there's an opportunity for you to direct those questions at the city's website. And the short version of the URL for that is on your screen here, cityofmarion.org/7th Ave Streetscape. Go there, you'll learn more information. There's some good answers to a number of questions. The information that we talked about here tonight in this presentation will be available to you and others. So if you want to be able to show it to folks or be able to refresh your memory as to what happened here tonight. And I simply want to say thank you. We appreciate it's 7:05. We tried to keep it within the 90 minutes, but your participation has been very, very good. Much better than I actually had hoped personally through this medium, which really speaks to your interest and the fact that you really do care about your community. So thank you very much. Like I said, we'll be posting this information to the website. If you have ideas or any of those things, feel free to try to post them there. And that information will be forwarded on to us by city staff as it becomes available to them. Any closing remarks from anyone on our panel? Okay, I think we are set. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for hanging in there, and we look forward to seeing you in Uptown. Take care. Stay safe. Goodbye.